I wanted to switch gears a little bit and ask each of you in turn to maybe turn back the clock, put yourselves in the shoes of a beginning entrepreneur. Say you didn't have this sort of nice relationship, this automatic access to resources for you, Bob, or to ideas for you, Terry. What would you be doing today if you were starting out today in today's climate in the life sciences or bioengineering area? What would your strategies be? Where would you start?
Well, again, let me put myself in the place of being an MIT professor today. And MIT has a lot of things that are set up for young entrepreneurs. They have what's called the Deshpande Center, which is you can write these grants up to $250,000. And it's not just the money. They also have people who will help you think about starting companies and things like that. They also have this 100K competition, where people in science and business get together, like, say, engineering in the Sloan School to start companies. So there's a whole range of these things. And I would probably take advantage of talking to older professors like me. So I've had lots of young professors at MIT come to me and ask me for advice, and probably some from Harvard too, and BU. So so I think that I think you'd probably do all those things, and I think that's what young people do. And I think different schools are set up in different ways to assist you. I mean, they also have a really good technology licensing office at MIT, and I know they do at other schools too. So I think having all these things are, today's world, in a way, it's much more sophisticated. There are many more ways of doing it, or degrees of freedom, than there were in the early 80s when, I started doing stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yours is an interesting question. The simple answer is I'd look for the next Bob Langer, but I want to come back and sort of talk about why your question is almost an impossible one, and I really want to throw flowers at Bob, because I've gone to a number of universities who themselves are trying to create the next Bob Langer, and I think it's a little bit hard, therefore, to turn the clock back. If I were doing it today, because again, Bob has done such a wonderful job of sort of creating a model for academic entrepreneurship that didn't exist before Bob Langer. There were a few examples like George Whitesides and others that were out there doing. Paul Schimmel were doing, Phil Sharp, but I think Bob has sort of become sort of the model for it. And so if I were doing it today, I'd be looking for the next Bob Langer. I had the great fortune of, when I was doing it 15 years ago, finding Bob Langer, and so I'm not going to go back on that one. That's what I would do again. And I'd seek out Bob.
What if you couldn't find him?
Well, I think, Bob and I didn't create entrepreneurship, and the venture business has been around a very long time. In fact, I don't know if, I hate to do this. How many people know the company American Research and Development? Okay. Yeah, 4 or 5 people. So ARD was started in 1956 by George Doriot, who was a Frenchman who had come to the States and was a general during the Second World War, returned and started ARD, and they put, I was just listening to the story yet again, they put $50,000 in the Digital Equipment Corp back in 1957, which ultimately was worth about $500,000. So that was sort of the genesis of venture capital as we now know it. So when I came into the venture business, was now in the 80s, there was clearly a model for making venture investments, and it was essentially trying to find established teams. I do think, what I would do, again, if I had to wind back the clock, I'd continue to look for established teams, but I would explore the new models, and again, I think the model that Bob represents and has been so successful at is the model that I want to believe that I would find again. But, it's all personality driven, and if you think about, again, if you look at the great universities here in town, if you look at the successful entrepreneurs that came out of those universities, they're sort of measured in 1 or 2 hands. So even the best only have a few of these guys, and the trick as a venture capitalist is finding some of them. Mm-hmm.